Chapter 27. The wedding was short and sweet, but oh so beautiful. As Taylor stood beside Alyssa, watching as her sister exchanged vows and shared her first kiss as a married woman, her heart just ached. She could feel Brandon watching her, and she wondered if they would ever make it as far as a wedding. After the vows, they all got little plates, the little clear plates Alyssa had needed from Costco, and fancy plastic silverware, and sat down to eat wherever they could find. The band B had bought 100 event chairs that would be used whenever necessary. It was a good investment, and Taylor would do anything for Alyssa. Together, Taylor and Brandon ate the foods that he and Lauren had prepared for them. There were plenty of servers, keeping the trays of food full, and Taylor knew she'd be calling on the same people the next time they needed someone for an event. "They're actually married," Taylor said, a bit of surprise lingering in her voice. "You didn't think they'd go through with it?" Brandon asked. "Oh, I figured they would. I wasn't sure if I would be able to get everything that was my part done in time." Taylor saw Justin across the way with Lauren talking to him. He didn't look pleased. "It was a real scramble for all of us to make it work." "I can see that. But you did it, and it was perfect." "I think so." She shrugged. "Have I told you yet today how very beautiful you look in that dress?" Taylor smiled. "I like to wear green, because it usually makes my eyes look green instead of boring old gray." Brandon shook his head. "Your eyes are anything but boring." The music played in the background, and a song came on that she particularly liked. When he took her hand and led her over to the deck, which had been transformed into a dance floor for the occasion, she couldn't help but feel her heart fluttering. "I hope you like to dance. It gives me an excuse to be in your arms, right?" It felt odd to be dancing with him at her sister's wedding, though. Why did weddings seem so intimate to her? Even one with 500 people felt intimate, for whatever reason. As they danced, she tried to picture them getting married and having children, but the picture was unclear. She was going to need to talk to him soon. Out of the corner of her eye, she spotted Amanda and Nick's friend Ryan talking. They seemed to be in a very animated conversation. But mostly Taylor's mind was on her relationship with Brandon. She had to talk to him before they went much further. It was necessary for her peace of mind. Asterisk. Early Sunday morning, Taylor walked down to Brandon's house. They were supposed to be going to Costco around 10, but she couldn't wait that long. They had to talk. She was already in love with him, and if he was truly the wastrel he was making himself out to be, she needed to make decisions about the relationship. When she arrived, she knocked, and Brandon opened the door, shirtless. She stared at him for a moment. "I just want to talk." Brandon looked behind him. "The house is a little messy, but come in. I'll get a shirt." He disappeared from the room and came back a few minutes later, finding Taylor sitting on his couch. He absently picked up a few envelopes and flipped through them. One of them obviously caught his eye. "Can you give me 1 minute to look at this? Get yourself a drink from the fridge." He pointed in the direction of what was obviously the kitchen and sat on the couch. Taylor was a little annoyed with him for not giving her his full attention when she had something very important to discuss, but she went and grabbed herself a Coke, getting him a Dr. Pepper. The little cabin was interesting. The only clutter she could see was around a drafting table in the corner. She wanted to go peek and see what was on it, but she didn't dare. Instead, she walked back and waited for him to read whatever it was that was so important. He finished with his letter and looked at her, shell-shocked. "I did it." She shook her head, having to wonder what on earth he was talking about. "You did what?" "My comic just got chosen for syndication. It's going to be in newspapers all across the country." He grabbed her by the shoulders and planted a kiss on her lips. "I've been working toward this for what feels like forever. I started drawing this thing my freshman year in college. She gave him an odd look. Is that what you meant by spending your time drawing when it wasn't tourist season? She asked. He nodded. Well, that and getting my comic syndicated, but that's done. He eyed her for a moment. Why? What did you think I meant? She shrugged, not wanting to meet his eyes. I kind of thought you were going to just take that time off. He laughed. There's no way I could take 9 months off after working 3. I'd lose my mind. I've always worked. Even when I was going to school, I was drawing for the school newspaper, and I got a small wage for that. He grinned. I was drawing the comic that is now in syndication. I had no idea. Alyssa told me that there was something I didn't know about you. He shook his head at her. There was. Did that something bother you? It did. I just couldn't figure out why a man with the kind of work ethic you obviously have would spend 9 months out of the year vegetating. He wouldn't. Brandon sighed. I'm surprised you went out with me, thinking I was a wastrel. I was so attracted to you, but I couldn't figure out why I'd be attracted to someone who just didn't want to work. It made no sense to me at all. Taylor got to her feet. Okay, I'll be by at 10 to pick you up for Costco. I thought you wanted to talk to me about something. She was embarrassed to think he was even needing to bring that up again. I came to ask you what you plan to do to fill your time after tourist season, because it was making me crazy. After watching Alyssa and Nick yesterday, I daydreamed a little about where our relationship could go, and I realized that I couldn't keep going unless I knew what your intentions were for those off months. I know it's crazy, but I couldn't imagine even dating someone who seriously didn't have any real goals. I guess I should have been clearer with my intentions, shouldn't I? He shook his head. I'm sorry about that. When I said I'd draw, I meant work on my comic and get it into more small newspapers if I couldn't get syndicated, but now I'm syndicated. Every time he said the word syndicated, he emphasized it and seemed astonished all over again that it had actually happened. I'm so happy for you. Taylor walked into his arms and hugged him, congratulating him properly instead of just being confused. Does that mean you're ready for a proposal? He asked, his eyes filled with mischief. Her eyes widened, and she shook her head. I think I'm ready to date you with the hope that someday we will marry, though, and I think that's a huge stride for me. I spend time every day doing things that have nothing to do with work. That's new for me. It's like with you, I can have all the same dreams, but they can be bigger dreams. I can dream about my chain of band BS, but I can also dream about having you by my side as each one opens. He nodded emphatically. I remember when I first saw you on the beach, all I could think was that you were there at the wrong time in my life. I didn't have the hours in a day to date you and give it the attention it deserved while running my taco boat. But look at us now. I made it work. Walks at night, bringing you tacos for lunch, it's perfect. She grinned. I think it's perfect, too. He frowned for a moment. Would you be willing to stop by my parents' house in Bennington on the way to Pokey? We could give them the news. I'm not sure if I'm ready to meet your parents. Taylor was petrified at the very idea. Sure you are. Mom needs to meet her future daughter-in-law. He grinned. Please? She nodded. I guess I can do that. Give me a minute to shower and dress, and I'll come to your place. We'll go right after that. All right. Even though she was nervous, Taylor knew it only made sense for her to meet his parents. They both thought the relationship would go far, and there was no reason to pretend it wasn't. When she got home, Lauren, Kayla, and Amanda were at the table eating, and Taylor grabbed a plate of food as well. She sat with her sisters to eat the raspberry pancakes that Lauren had perfected. So, Brandon isn't going to be a wastrel 9 months out of the year, Taylor said softly. Lauren looked at her oddly. Where did that come from? I thought you were still sleeping. Taylor shook her head. I walked over to Brandon's. Needed to talk to him about what he was doing with 9 months of his life. She took a big bite of the pancakes. Delicious as always. What's he doing, then? Amanda asked. The sisters had all been for a relationship with Taylor and Brandon, but there were reservations. He's working on his comic strip. Found out this morning that it was going to be syndicated, which is what he's been working toward. And then I had to admit that I'd trudged over there this morning because I couldn't continue a relationship with a wastrel. Kayla laughed. Sounds like you. It does, doesn't it? Amanda grinned. So, all is good? Another wedding to plan? Taylor shook her head. I don't think I'm quite ready for an engagement, but I am going to meet his parents today. Ooh, Lauren said. Meeting the parents is a huge step. I know. Taylor squirmed a little under her sister's watchful gazes. Okay, what do we need from Costco? Kayla shook her head at Taylor. You can pretend it's not a big deal all you want, but you know it is. You were worried you'd choose a man like Tim, weren't you? Aren't you worried you will? Taylor asked. Not at all. I'm really good at dumping men at the first sign of idiocy. I won't marry a man who isn't fun-loving, a good dancer, and good with his hands. No pansies for me. Kayla enunciated her words with her fork in the air. Amanda grinned. I'd take an artist any day. Her eyes were dreamy. Lauren shrugged. I just want someone who is exactly like Dad. Is that too much to ask? All 3 of her sisters answered her at once. Yes. Then the 4 of them laughed together. Do you need your hair and makeup done to meet his parents? Lauren asked, rubbing her hands together as she returned to the topic at hand. She loved beautifying her sisters every chance she got. Taylor shook her head. If they don't like me as I am, then they never will like me. She wanted to be liked on her own merits. You're so right, Kayla said. I felt like I looked like a clown yesterday after letting Lauren do my makeup. If a man can't love me for me, then he's not worth having. Taylor shook her head. I'm just glad that I know what's going on with Brandon, and I'm ready to move forward with that relationship. Oh, and just so you know, I'm going to buy a whole chain of banned BS for the area. No one is going to stop me now. If you need remodeling done, Kayla said, grinning. Or any interior design, Amanda said. I'm not helping you. I already work hard enough, Lauren said, and they all laughed. She put her hand over her sister's. Seriously, though, Taylor. I think that's the perfect dream for you. It's the dream I've had all along. Adding in Brandon and more houses is just making it bigger. I guess you could say I'm expanding my dreams. That's the perfect thing for you, Kayla said. I'm proud of you. I'm a little proud of me, too. Look how far we've come. Taylor stood when Brandon walked in the back door. Be back in a few hours. Have a wonderful time. Amanda called after her. Epilogue. Amanda stood at her window, watching the rain drench the grounds of the Band B. She loved to be able to see the water hit the lake, and she rejoiced in storms. She always had. She had to start with a new client that week, who seemed like she would be particularly difficult to work with, but Amanda loved a challenge. As she looked around her room, she realized that being back at the lake had made her calmer about certain things. She wasn't sure if it was the atmosphere at the lake or the fact that she was surrounded by her sisters. Well, 3 of them. And she didn't think it would be long before Taylor and Brandon got engaged. They were right for each other. It was obvious to anyone who saw them together. Now that Alyssa had married, things were odd, but they were still good. She'd see Alyssa at the office, and they'd see her often for supper, she was sure. Alyssa wasn't fond of cooking overmuch, and going to the band bee was already a habit. At least she hoped it was. She took a deep breath, thinking about the wedding. It had been so beautiful. She was happy for Alyssa. No one deserved to be happy more. Now if only she could find her right place in Bear Lake. She would need to work on designing her own dreams, though.